an out of body experience, and I was shooting through space next to what I would describe as a cosmic energy, and it had this. It felt like the ultimate feminine.
Hey,
G'day, Will. How are you?
how you doing, Keegan?
Very well, thanks.
So, what's on your mind then? Tell me about how things are going.
Where I'm at, I guess I've had what I can only describe as a spiritual awakening within the last 3 months to God, and begun pursuing knowledge about Him, and trying to move closer uh, to Him. And so, probably I could give you a bit of a bio about myself and how I've ended up here, if you're interested in that, and
Yeah,
maybe
that would
some
be
questions will come out of that.
yeah, that would be really interesting. So, let's rewind to maybe the point where you're not taking religion seriously at all, if that was ever a point in your life.
Yeah, so probably my earliest memory of at least questioning religion was we had scripture in primary school, and I would have been about 10 years old. And myself, and I've got a twin brother as well, who's obviously played a big role in my life. But we went home and we said to our parents, "Well, we don't know what this thing is to do with God. We've never seen any evidence of it. Do you believe in it?" And our parents said, "Well, yeah, we're religious. We're Anglican." They never went to church though, and so we said, "Okay, well, what does it mean to you? Like, prove it to us," pretty much. And they had no satisfying answer, and so we kind of just went on our way, and didn't really think about it much. Like, we had quite a good life growing up. I would say that I had the perfect childhood. There was no trauma. I had both parents at home. We were put into music and sports, and did well at school. So it was kind of, there was no searching for anything outside of the home. Everything was catered for. We were fulfilled in that way, in a safe environment. And I remember as we got older, we had a chemistry teacher who believed in God, or professed a belief, and we asked him, "Okay, well, what is your evidence or your reasoning?" We thought he was a great chemistry teacher, and so he would have a good reasoning. And he pretty much explained to us Pascal's wager, and said that, well, if heaven exists, the rewards are so infinitely great that I may as well believe than not believe, just based on that. And again, that wasn't compelling. It didn't make sense to believe something that in a lot of ways we felt was literally untrue, for some potential reward after death. It didn't make sense. And so um, we kind of just left it there, both him and I, and kind of we left the home and went into the secular world. And for me, that's where my journey really started. And we kind of went our own separate ways as twins. The whole life was spent together. We shared the same room. We competed against each other and everything, and it was a healthy competition. We would wrestle in the backyard. We lived on a bit of property, so we spent a lot of time outside together. But then once we left home, we did live together, but we did different university degrees, and made different friend groups. And I personally, our personalities are quite different, and so his a little bit more logical than me, which is strange. When we were younger, I was very drawn to mathematics and the simplicity of it, and I think I just took to it easily, and so I enjoyed that the most. I got good marks in it, and so I said, I'm going to keep doing this. And then English was always something I struggled with because it didn't come so easily, where he was the opposite. But as we aged, it switched. And so he is, more logical, where I'm more intuitive, more open to experience and seeing things in their wholeness, and trying to fit the picture together, where he sees the minute details and is very logical and working things out. And so for me personally, I was very driven by, well, psychoanalyzing myself when I was, because we had this perfect upbringing, I felt I was kind of the perfect child in a lot of ways. And then when I went out into secular society, I looked at the world and I said, okay, what is it to be the perfect man? How do I live up to society's expectations? And so what I was exposed to, that was, okay, you need to make money. You should try and get an attractive partner. You should have six-pack abs. Being cool was a big thing for me for some reason. And so I watched a lot of Joe Rogan, and so he was an inspiration to me. And I saw that he was using drugs and smoking weed, and so that was the difference between my brother and I. We both had views earlier in our adolescence where we didn't want to drink alcohol or use drugs. We didn't see the point of it. But then I flipped and wanted to experiment with those things, and so I did that probably starting at age 17. So not as young as a lot of people, but went in hard on it because especially smoking marijuana I was very big in fitness. And so that was to me, it was a healthy alternative to drinking alcohol. I saw a lot of my peers going out and drinking alcohol. And I thought, well, smoking pot, that's a healthier alternative. And so I'm content with that, or I'm comfortable. And that developed into, I slowly started just hanging out with people who were doing that, and my friendships revolved around that. And I was, that for a long time, that was kind of in the backdrop of my life. At the same time, I was pursuing, what do I want to do as a career? And that was driven a lot by money. And so I remember one of the first, or as I was coming out of high school, I wanted to be a pilot. And the reason I came to that conclusion was because I looked up on Google what careers make the most money, and pilot was the top one. And I thought, that sounds pretty cool. And then it changed to fighter pilot because I thought that's even cooler than being an airline pilot. And so I went down that path for a period, and then I came to the realization after going through a lot of the testing and the process that this is going to be a very restricted lifestyle, and I'm not going to get the chance to probably experiment with these different drugs that I'm hearing about on Joe Rogan and stuff. And so I'm not sure I want to go down that path. Maybe there's a better way to make money. As I went to university and did business and commerce for a year, and came to the end of that and thought, well, I don't want to work for someone else. If I'm going to be in business, I want to be an entrepreneur. And so I had a friend who I'd met in doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he was older. He was in his late 20s and had done an engineering degree, and he had left that behind in his good paying job because he said, I want to be an entrepreneur. And he said, Keegan, I'll mentor you. Come with me and start learning about this stuff, and we'll try and make something happen. And so I started studying entrepreneurship and marketing, and the whole time I was still smoking pot, but it would be in like fits and starts. If the business stuff was going really well or there were exciting things happening, I would be focused on that. And then maybe there would be a 6-month period where I was smoking marijuana. And so I started going down that path, and then I was very interested in the whole the pickup artistry community, how to attract women. And so I went and I did a boot camp with one of them, and it was exciting, and it got me out of my comfort zone and actually approaching people. And I realized that I have the power to go up and I can talk to a beautiful woman and take her home in a night. And what a crazy thing this is. But there was something lacking where I didn't have the sense of authority to give myself permission to do it. I could be there with an instructor, and he could say, go and talk to this girl, and I was perfect. I was on. But when it was me by myself, I couldn't. I didn't have that initiative, and so that was for a long time. I would just watch the videos and not even be going out and practicing the thing. But out of that, I ended up getting a job in that industry, and so I was working, doing marketing through that. And then after a while, that kind of fell apart and lost its allure. And then so I went and worked in marketing in a health and fitness company that my friends owned, and did that for a period. And then I got to a stage where I recognized that I really enjoy this marketing stuff. I like thinking about people's thoughts and beliefs and how those beliefs drive actions, and then how these words on a page can inspire someone to buy our product or inspire them to do something. But what I recognized was the product we were selling wasn't what these people really needed. So it was a fitness program, and it was to do with mindset. But I figured at the end of the day, if someone wants to lose weight themselves, they need to become obsessed themselves. They need to be invested. And there's nothing that you can kind of give to someone to motivate them in as much as them doing the work themselves. And so that business, it was great. My friends ran it, but it was their first business, and they blew it up massively in the first year, overhired, and then the number of clients that they had coming in, the leads started to dwindle, and so they had to let everyone go. And then I was left as the sole marketer with not enough experience to keep it going. And I said, this is too much for me, so I've got to leave. But I continued to pursue that path of thinking that sales and marketing was the best skill to make money. At this stage, I was still on that money train. And I thought, okay, well, what's something I can do to improve my sales ability? I'll go and do real estate. And so I went and worked under someone doing real estate for about 6 months. And that was hard for me because it was a lot of cold calling and knocking on people's doors. And at the heart of it, I recognized that I was building this relationship with people that was based on my desire to make money off them. So it was all disingenuous to me, and not to knock anyone that works in real estate, because I know a lot of great real estate agents who do it well and it is meaningful to them. But for me, it just felt disingenuous. And so I left that and said, okay, what do I want to do with my life? At this point, I was probably about 24, still using drugs and stuff on the side, but also just seeking answers. And I'd gone through Tony Robbins programs and looked into a lot of Eastern philosophy and done meditation retreats, gone on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, I really enjoy thinking about how these beliefs impact people's behaviors and how the value, the meaning that they get from life. And so psychology was the most obvious thing for me to go and study. I said, I want to continue with this skill, but I want to be able to help people with it. And also university, after coming out of the anxiety that I had in real estate, I was like, the university is the easy option right now. I can just sit back and read books and do a lot of work that's I'm going to be able to get by and continue with all these little side pursuits. And so went into university, and that's where I've been the last 3 years. I just finished my 3rd year of university and set on that path of becoming a psychologist, because ultimately it's the thing that I would like to do after all of this time of going and trying a number of different things. How that ties into my religious experience, I guess along the way, I had a number of moments using different psychedelic drugs that were profound. They were littered with moments of mundanity and just waste, and especially a lot of the smoking marijuana, like it just numbed me to the world and made it very hard to build friendships and communicate with people, because obviously I was stoned, and the only friendships that stoners build is with other stoners, because they just seem dumb to people who aren't in that headspace. But I did have some profound experiences where, in particular, I had an experience of using the substance DMT, which is a dimethyltryptamine. It's the king psychedelic to a lot of people. And it was something that I didn't want to do, because I thought, if I'm not entrenched in an identity, or I don't have some sort of career, this could end up in me deciding to become a hippie and going and living in the forest. That was kind of my fear. And so it was a substance that I thought I would leave until I was older. But the opportunity arose, and so I used it, and I prepared for it in the sense that I fasted leading up to it, and tried to just eat healthy in the week before, and felt mentally well enough constituted for it. And I had the experience of being shot into space and shooting through. It was an out of body experience, and I was shooting through space next to what I've described as a cosmic energy. And it had this, it felt like the ultimate feminine energy. It was mother nature, this creative force. And it communicated to me that it was the creator of this reality, and it created it so we could experience the world, and it could experience the world through us, and that we're all one. Very kind of cliche hippie ideas. And during that experience, there were a number of things that happened. One of them being, I asked, well, where is the masculine energy? Because this was the feminine. And I thought, well, is there a masculine God? And I had a friend who had also had an experience on DMT where he was confronted by that. And he had an experience where he was a child who was molested by a priest, and he experienced that on this trip, and then switched roles, and then experienced it from the priest, and then as the and so that was confronting. And I thought, well, hopefully I don't come across this in my trip. But I asked it. I said, "Where's the masculine energy?" And it communicated to me that was me, and I got the message that it was my consciousness was the masculine aspect. And now I don't know what a lot of that means, and it's very mystical, and I didn't take much away from it afterwards. But something that had changed was I now had this sense that there was something higher, some creative energy that was higher that I hadn't ever felt before. And when I would think on the reality of me being a person here talking, being able to communicate to you, obviously we're through the screen, but we're conscious. And that is such a bizarrely profound thing that my logical conclusion to that was there must be something higher, because this is so strange that there must be a God. And so that opened the doorway to me believing that, okay, there is some higher power. And I sat on that for a number of years. And then what ultimately has led me to Christianity and Catholicism was going through a period of just despair and depression, which was caused from trying to, well, the cause was my own greed. So back in it must have been 2020, the end of 2020, the election that happened in the US, Donald Trump lost, and there was a lot of controversy around that. And I saw something to do with cryptocurrencies, and I thought, wow, this is the perfect time for cryptocurrencies. You're going to have a lot of disenfranchised people who were supporting Trump who are now like, we can't trust the government because they thought it was stolen. And so I figured, okay, people are going to get in on this cryptocurrency stuff, so I'm going to be first. And so I did that. I dove straight into it, started working as much as I could, and put following all of my money into it, and made a lot of money. And then there was a downturn. I lost a lot I made, and then I recognized that NFTs, they were the next thing. And so I thought, okay, well, I can get in on these. And I had a partner at the time who she wanted to have a family and have a house. And my mindset was, well, if you want to do that, then this is the way to do it. I'm just going to obsess over this day and night, and try and make that happen. And so I made more and more money, especially like, when times are good, there's this instinct that says it's going to continue. And so then I said to my brother, "Oh, do you want to come in on this with me?" And he said, "Sure, but I'll lend you the money, and any profits you give me half, and if it fails, you just pay me back." And I said, "Okay, well, it's not a very good deal for me, but I'm so sure of this that let's do it." And then inevitably, the Ukraine war happened. Russia invades Ukraine, and it all crashes. And I don't know when to sell it, and I start selling stuff at the wrong time and the right time, and just lose everything. So I lose everything that I'd put in, all the money I'd made, and now I owe my brother money. And it was just a crushing reality to realize that I had become so obsessed with this thing and so greedy, and then to lose it all. My relationship suffered, and it failed for other reasons as well. And I just ended up in this kind of despair where I turned to just smoking weed, more weed than I'd ever smoked. I couldn't smoke enough. I wouldn't get high anymore. I just felt normal. I felt more normal smoking, being high, and than I did when I was sober. I would wake up and just smoke first thing in the morning. And the same with food and porn. It was kind of like I was just trying to stack all of these things together, the trifecta of material things to fill that hole. And I just reached this point one day where I was sitting under my house getting high, and in the pit of my stomach, my soul was just crushed, and I had this vision of the Golem from Lord of the Rings just in the fetal position in my stomach. And it was at that point where I guess it was what is described as rock bottom. And my partner, my ex, she was in AA, and so she knew the power of prayer and submitting your will to God, and she was always trying to get me to stop smoking weed and to pray. And I just thought, it's not gonna. It didn't make sense to me, and so I felt weird engaging in it. We would pray, we'd say grace before a meal, but I never actually went to God and asked for His help, because it just felt weird to me. But then on this particular day, I did. I said, I need your help, because what I'm doing isn't working. I'm trying to run this show myself, and it's not gone well. And there was a relief that came with that. And the more I prayed, the more relief I got. And that obsession that I had for those things, it started to disappear. And I would think of like how addicted I was to my phone and looking at the cryptocurrency stuff, and it would make me feel sick that I was stuck in that. And so I just filled my life with listening to people talking about Christianity and then eventually Catholicism. And any spare time I had, I was just listening to these videos and building up my representation and praying. And those addictions just fell away in almost a day. It was such a bizarre thing, because I had been indoctrinated into this kind of understanding of, if you use drugs, then your brain, it changes, and your dopamine system changes, and if you want to quit, it's going to be really hard because you've had these permanent changes to your brain. And so whenever I tried to quit before, because there had been many time where I thought to myself, oh, this is not good for me. I'm full on addicted to this and I can't stop. And I would promise myself I would stop, and then the next day I was doing it again, and I thought, my brain is fried here, and I'm fully just stuck in this. And I put it down to that belief that my brain had changed. But then through prayer to God, through recognition of this higher value, in a day, that desire was stripped away completely. It just fell away from me. And so that's a curious thing that I've been thinking about a lot and sitting on how that works, and how it conflicts with at least the perspective that I had beforehand, and something that I guess a lot of people have. And yeah, from there I've just seeked out more moving closer to God. And so I realized that, okay, this is going to involve probably going to a church and meeting people at the church and being invited into the ritual of the church and learning the things they have to teach. And so I've taken that step, and I guess some things that have blown me away, and then I'll let you jump in because I've been rambling for a bit. But the first thing, I guess, is just the turning on to the immense wisdom that is within the Bible. And there was something that I'd never been aware of before, because I had these preconceptions or these notions of the fact that, oh, some of these things don't seem literally true to me, so I'm just going to write off the whole thing. Whereas when I flipped and I said, well, I'm not sure about the things that don't seem true to me, but instead of writing it off, I'm just going to dive into it, because it seems like there's so much wisdom in there. And then when I went into the people I've met were just so generous with their time and inviting. And so I went to the chaplaincy at the university, and they connected me. They had a little mass there and invited me, and I met some people. And then one of the ladies there, she said, oh, I know a guy who's your age who's big in the church, and he would probably like to meet you. And so she gave me his number, and then he invited me along to a recollection, and that was fascinating to me. And then he said, okay, well, if you want to do this RCIA program, then I'll get some people together. And so he just went and organized it and invited me along. And then, yeah, there was every Monday I've gone for the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's an hour, and it's been me with my friend Will, who's a pathologist, another gentleman who is a surgeon, and another gentleman who is a carpenter. And I thought, in what world would these 3 professional men come and spend time with some random and share insights and knowledge about the world, like a surgeon in particular, and well, actually, not to denigrate any of their jobs, because it's such a charitable thing from all of them, but it just blew me away, and so that's been really quite inspiring.
That's a really beautiful story, especially at the end there, thinking about all the different people coming together. That's what you would expect from the universal church, that's for everybody, and it's got a place for up to Thomas Aquinas, right down to the little child just first learning to recite prayers.
Mm.
Now, tell me a bit more about what kind of books you were reading during this time where you were being attracted to the DMT messaging of Rogan and all the rest of it. Because it sounds like even then you were searching for something spiritual. There was always that kind of hunger for meaning and purpose or insight in your life, and that just the money-making activities or the pickup, they weren't really enough to satisfy you. Otherwise, my guess would be you would just be chasing girls the whole time and you'd be happy with earning money. There wouldn't be any DMT or pot.
Yeah. So I was reading a lot of, well, I didn't read anything really in high school. It wasn't until I left school that one of the first books I remember reading was the biography of Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I love that band. And so that was something that kind of hooked me on reading, because I just thought it was well written. And then from there, I read the book The Game by Neil Strauss, and so that was all to do with the pickup stuff. And after that, it was a lot of self-development. So like the seven habits of highly successful people. I've got all of them over on my bookshelf now, but things like The Way of the Superior Man. So that's uses a lot of Eastern ideas and also kind of secular ideas regarding masculinity.
Which ones of those influenced you most then? Your picture that you'd built up from your reading of the highest priorities a man should have, which ones really stuck in you?
Oh, that's a good question.
You mentioned six-pack abs and being good with girls. What else though?
Yeah, in terms of um, it's a good question. A lot of the just looking over at what I've got there, a lot of the Buddhist ideas, especially, and then as I got into psychology, in particular, Peterson was a big has been a big influence. That's moved me towards more the religious thought and the significance of meaning in my life. But a lot of the stuff that I was reading was to do with influence, and persuasion, and communication, and how to convey myself in particular ways, and not recognizing that your communication and the way that you behave comes from the internal or the way that you view the world, those uh, values that are deepest, I guess. And it's not about these different tactics so much as actually just how you see yourself. And that's why I think this awakening to God has been so it's been revolutionary for me, because it wasn't only the like not smoking pot that it's changed, but it's changed all aspects of my life. The way I communicate with people. I've always valued kindness, I guess, but even just not doing it from a place of selfishness, but genuinely caring about other people and taking the time for that. I kind of isolate myself away, thinking that I'm not as kind of smart or intelligent as these people I see online, and I'm not making money, haven't cracked the code to making money yet, so I can't go out and just spend time chatting with people. I want to be here studying and reading, but then there was like I guess my shadow, or the flip side to that was then I would just end up going and smoking pot anyway, and being isolated in that sense. But yeah, in regards to reading, there's nothing that jumps out. And I guess I find when I read stuff, I don't remember things so well as just recognizing what didn't make sense to me or what's new, and then assimilating that into kind of how I view the world, and then moving on to the next thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So listening to you then, it seems like the most consistently powerful motivation for you as a man through your like early to mid 20s is basically making money. That's the thing that is driving you mostly, like the study decisions and things that you're obsessed about. You mentioned the Golem idea with the precious, especially with the crypto. Now, have you moved away from seeing money as the defining aspect of a man? And if so, to what? What have you moved to?
Yeah, absolutely. I have. I think also that the money was connected to validation from women, and objectification of women as well, though sexualizing them, and like the whole pickup stuff, I guess. I was trying to go out and see like how attractive of a woman can I get with, and this idea of pedestalizing women, which when that's a common thing in the manosphere or the pickup world, is like, don't put women on a pedestal. And so my immature brain would think like, oh, that means that you should just don't value them more than you. And whether that means you're like using that as a tactic and trying to degrade them in conversation using like negs. This was early pickup stuff. But in reality, I've come to realize that it's more to do with the natural law of the world, and the fact that hypergamy exists, and a man's role isn't to be validated by how attractive his partner is, but his role is to love his partner and make her feel safe. But in regards to how my conception of what manhood is. It switched completely to being a father, finding a partner who has good values. And to me, those values, attractiveness isn't even one of the top ones now. It's, are they Christian, literate, kind, and open-minded, or maybe not even open-minded. I've just chucked that on there, but especially literate. I want a partner who can teach my children English and inspire and be interested in reading books, and because I think there's so much just value in that. And then Christianity, obviously, it's just so much meaning tied up within that, and those values just lead to a good life, and then kindness, which is, I guess, tied up in the two, and then attractiveness would maybe come after those things. But for me personally, yeah, it's finding a partner and then having a family is the most important thing, and I value that more than, well, wealth completely. Like, even if we live in a crappy little home, as long as my partner is comfortable and my family's safe, that would mean more than anything to me. And it's thanks to listening to your videos and then being exposed to this religious thought and this idea that there is a natural law and a right way to live, and that sex in particular, the primary outcome or the primary cause for that is procreation, and it's not pleasure. And I hadn't considered that completely until recently, until I had heard you talking about it a couple of months ago. My friend and I recognized that this is a problem, using sex for pleasure, and especially masturbation and porn. And so we said, let's have a competition to stop doing that completely. And we said, okay, if whoever gives in has to buy the other one dinner and has to wash their car. I thought that was a good deal. And then I also had these religious views that I was entertaining and trying to adopt. And so I had even the help from God with that as well. And so far I've been successful on that. And that's 2 months, which is absolutely crazy to me, because I was habitually doing it. It was like my nighttime routine to put myself to sleep for probably my whole adulthood, with like maybe little gaps. But yeah, that's been completely changed for me as well.
That's brilliant. Well done. And how does it feel different now, having stuck to that for coming up for 2 months?
Yeah, well, it makes me, it would be like someone who, it's similar to my use of drugs, where when it's been a long time since using it, that motivation to use again is completely gone. And even though the sexual drive is a more natural thing, and I imagine that, like, yeah, it's natural to be aroused if you're exposed to sexual material, no matter how long it's been. But without being exposed to that, I have no impulse to go and like pleasure myself at this moment. It's really quite easy, and I think especially because it is tied to that goal of having a family, and for it to be for procreation within a marriage, that just makes it so much easier, because I recognize that, oh, this is giving me extra energy and vitality to do the things that will move me towards that highest good. And so it's been easy in that sense.
That's good to hear. That's how it's supposed to work. So you've got a God-given sex drive as a young man to motivate you to find a woman, to get married, to have kids. So sex is a good thing. Your sex drive is a good thing. And we don't want to just dissipate that and squander it and kill your motivation by getting it in an easy way, the wrong way, so that you don't have to work hard for those things that are much more important. You been into health and fitness as well over this time, smoking pot and drugs, and you always stayed in shape?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's always been something that's been important to me. And it would also, yeah, there was no reason that I couldn't get high and go do Muay Thai in the backyard. I actually enjoyed that a lot of the time. It was a good excuse to do that because it added an extra element to it. But I will say one thing that I noticed, which I found curious, was over this period. So I had about a month of not smoking pot, and I was praying, and then I felt released from it. But I had this curiosity of, if I go back, will I be hooked back in, or am I free from this? And so at the end of the university semester, and on that natural high of finishing the year, then the craving kind of kicked in, and the rationalization of, well, I finished uni for the year, so why not? And I had a weekend away with friends coming up where I knew that there would be alcohol and drugs and whatever else, and I would probably end up doing it then. So I rationalized that I'll go and get some. And what I found was, once I started, I had an impulse to continue going until it was finished, or to finish it off, kind of like the impulse to finish a meal. Even though you're full, it's like you want to finish that thing. You can't just stop for a day. And so I didn't. I smoked for about 2 weeks straight. And over that period, I couldn't connect to God in the same way. I couldn't pray and feel a sense of connection and fulfillment or satisfaction in that. And it was almost like I envisioned it like I was in a different realm of reality. Think of like the imagery of the crucifix. My connection to the vertical had been removed, and I was stuck on this linear plane. And there were different things that were, I guess, available to me. Like when I use substances, especially if it's the first time in a long time, I think it must just be, there's a lot of dopamine there, especially marijuana. If I hadn't used it for a long time, it was like all of the ideas and the thoughts I had previously in that sober period would be brought together and amplified and looked at in different perspectives. And I would have this rush of new ideas and thoughts and different ways of looking at the world. And I felt it was like this, almost like it's a different realm. And if I was a shaman in some tribal society, this is what they would be doing with their spiritual medicines, is going to this different realm. But the risk is that I'm not a shaman with their traditions and their safety nets. I'm just a regular person. And so there's a very real risk of getting trapped in that place. And I really felt the sense of that, and felt the loss of this disconnection from God. And so when I finished those drugs, I just had this sense that, I don't want to do that again. I much more enjoy the peace that I have being connected to God, and the fulfillment I get from reading the Bible and it making sense, because I'm not because I can concentrate, compared to when I'm high and my brain's all over the place and I can only get through a paragraph in an hour of reading.
That's interesting. Some of the research done on psychedelics in Christian monks a few decades back reached a similar conclusion. So these guys thought, could LSD have any kind of mystical usage? We've got some of these pagan religious rituals in various world cultures, and it's important to them for a connection to the sacred. What happens if we try it and prepare specially? And these were all highly trained guys, and fasting and praying and all the rest of it. And their conclusion was that it was similar to the mystical experiences they'd got through prayer in many respects, except for the one crucial one, which is a sense of connection to the sacred.
Mm.
And all the monks said, what we've experienced on acid lacks that. And we don't think it has value in terms of a religious practice. Moreover, the Catholic Church teaches that using drugs is a grave evil because it is contrary to natural law. What is the purpose of our minds, our intellects? Well, it's rationality, it's truth, it's understanding and communicating that, sharing it. Problem you get, and we can see this resulting in the lives of people who, unlike you, don't get out of that world quick enough. Some of them can end up with damaged minds. You've got people who are in mental institutions, people who have killed themselves, people who can't provide for their families, because those psychedelics can all interfere with the rational capabilities of your mind and be a doorway to the demonic. I think
Mm.
there is what you were saying there with being stuck in that other place. There are lots of bad things that can happen. And I liked your image of the crucifix being about the intersection of the vertical and the horizontal, thinking about it as the intersection between time and eternity. We
Mm.
can't genuinely ascend by our own power. We can't go up, and God needs to come down, which is what the incarnation is. And a lot of that is about patience and waiting and knocking on the door and then waiting for him to answer. If you're doing it with psychedelics, I don't think you go up. I think you go down. I think
Mm.
the dregs of whatever is in your subconscious, that's what you tend to encounter. And
Yeah.
that can be a frightening thing because, as Jung put it, and I think Peterson has been right to stress this in his work, that part of ourselves reaches all the way down to hell.
Mm. Yeah, well, Jung also said, and Peterson stresses this as well, beware of unearned wisdom. And yeah, my experiences would attest to that. I did have one experience on acid, and acid was a substance that I really enjoyed for a period. But one experience I had was with some friends, and there was an acquaintance at the time who was there, and all of us were tripping, and he uh, was very confrontational. He's naturally a narcissistic guy. And my friend whose house it was, he said, okay, the rules are just don't mess up my house, like it's my mum's house, and just let's just have a fun time. And so this guy went and wrote like don't break the rules or something. He wrote it in a marker on one of the tables, and the guy whose house it was, he said, don't do that. And so then he wrote on himself, don't break the rules or something. And that was confronting, because when you're in this heightened state of drugs, my mind at least went to, well, what's next? He's going to carve this into his arm with a knife or something. Like, you don't kind of know the potential direction this could go in. And so he was there, and I noticed he was like puffing his body up when talking to one of my friends. And so I said to him, well, I noticed that. I thought it was interesting, and because he was my friend, I thought I could tell him. But then later he came over. I said it looked like you were trying to intimidate him or something. And then later, when we were alone, he came up and grabbed my arm and said, is this intimidating to you, or something along those lines? And I kind of shook him off, and it was fine. It was bizarre, but I thought that was strange. And so then as the day progressed, we smoked weed with the acid, and well, that ramps it up to another level and really changes things up. And in my experience, it was always the most fun, because it was that you would peak on the acid, and then it was the next experience from that. But it heightened my emotions to the point that his confrontation and challengingness was too much. And so I said to him, I had the realization that, because he was kind of wigging us out, that he was there, like, this guy's a little bit unhinged and we're concerned because we're all high. And I had the idea that, oh, we should have had someone sober here to ground us in reality. And I realized that. And when I realized it, I said it to the one person that was in the room with me, which was him. And when he said it, when I said it to him, he said, well, like, yeah, of course, like we know what's real, like the floor's real and money's real. And so he pushed back on me. But for whatever reason, because I was, well, under the influence of drugs, I felt like he was challenging me, and that I wasn't safe. And it was the first time in my entire life that I've been struck by just the deepest fear, and it went deep into my soul. And I thought, like, this dude could kill us. And so I just thought he's a psychopath. And like I had experienced later, as I thought about it, like I experienced the feminine archetype of the good mother, as Jung talks about it, which is like Mother Nature. There's also the terrible mother, which is death. And on that day in him, I experienced that, or I saw that, and it struck me to my core. And I was anxious about it for a long period after it. And it took me quite a while to redevelop my friendship with him, because I was so anxious after the experience. And that showed me that, like, these things aren't to be played with, because that could have gone south so quickly. Like, thinking that he was a psychopath and that he might kill everyone there, then what's to say that I don't try and kill him first or something? Who knows where that goes? But just to add to it, in regards to when you spoke about the Christian monks and their use of LSD, my experience, especially the first time I ever used it, it stripped away all of the structures of reality that I had, and put me in this place of presence where I was very childlike. And it was almost like what the Buddhist monks are trying to achieve with meditation, this sense of non-self and just complete presence. And what's fascinated me about that is this idea of God being connected to the word, and there's laws, and this, the religion is based on words and structure and an understanding of that. And so when you strip that away, I could see how that could be a loss of connection to this God, and how it's similar to my experience of the feminine God on the DMT, which is, it seems simply like the creative energy, whereas the masculine male has something very particular to do with words, and that's like in John 1, which I wrote down because I wanted to ask you about words and their significance. But yeah, he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so I don't know if that connection I've made kind of made any sense to you.
For sure. Yeah. This is about Logos, and the image of God in us is the fact that we have intellect and free will, as I'm sure you know from your initiation into the church. And if you're taking drugs, then that rationality and your ability to make sensible decisions and commit your mind fully to the truth is what's interfered with. So that's why they're wrong, to put it bluntly. And God, religion, the Catholic Church, that's going to require the fullest development and commitment of your intellectual powers. This is a intellectual, logical endeavor, just as much as it involves your heart as well. It involves the whole person. So it's not something that we want to just set aside your intellect for. In that sense, religion is a really masculine pursuit. It's not just a matter of wishy-washy feelings or sensations. It's something you have to understand with great clarity, and faith and reason go together in that way.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've got a few questions. I'll quickly ask you them because we're nearing the end of the hour.
Yeah, I've got
Well,
one about patience for you as well. Remind me to get to that at the
okay,
end.
absolutely. I guess my first one, if you wouldn't mind, um, maybe talking about the significance of words in your own life and vocabulary and uh, just any particular views you have on that, being an English teacher, and the way that I guess it's opened you to reality or understanding the world. Do you have any thoughts? And then maybe tying that into seems like a subversion of the meanings of words that seem so common today. Like I was thinking of this idea of Planned Parenthood, and how this business has nothing to do with parenthood. It's the opposite. It's the destruction of parenthood, but it's a subversion of the meaning of words.
Yeah, building on what I said a second ago about it, I think that language is a sign of the fact that we are rational animals. So no other animal can use words. It's only human beings. That's not what makes us human, but it is a reflection of the special thing about us, which is we have intellects. We can understand abstractions. So we can use words to represent concepts that we can communicate to each other, that we can manipulate, we can think logically, etc. So, in a sense, language is tied to what is most special and unique about us, the fact that we have intellects. And this means it's got great potential for misuse as well. And I think here, Christianity is really onto something unique with what it teaches about the devil, which is that he was created as the brightest of the angels. And once he decides to reject God and go wrong, that means he's got the furthest distance to fall. So the fact that he is very powerful in intellect means that he also has enormous potential for destructive use of that. And we see that with words too. They can be a great tool for truth, goodness, and beauty in our lives. That's the power of the Logos that we share in. The human mind, in some sense, participating in God's activity. But when it goes wrong, what do we get? Well, there's a great book on the Third Reich by Victor Klemperer, which you might enjoy from a psychological perspective. And he talks
Okay.
about how words can be like little doses of arsenic that can poison you. So you might not notice it at first, but they'll build up. And he noticed this in the Nazi rhetoric. And you can see it as well in the way that many slogans start to take hold of people in their individual lives. I would point to things that sound sexy, sound cool in the pickup world, like alpha fucks, beta bucks. A lot of guys find that really convincing. But when you actually think about it, there's very little substance to it, because what women will really want is the alpha who will stay with them and provide for them. They're not happy in many ways to live life with what the pickup community calls a beta, but it rhymes. So it sounds cool. You also get this in equity, diversity, inclusivity. Some of the woke parlance as well works on slogans and lists of three, all the way back to the French Revolution. And I think there's something about that three chiming that can almost switch off rational thought, because it appeals to us in an aesthetic way. And I don't know whether this is something that goes all the way up to the idea of the Trinity and things coming in threes and people having a deep craving for that. So when something arrives to us, which is packaged in that manner, we are drawn to it, and it fulfills something that we need, but we're not careful enough about assessing it intellectually. So I've always treated words with a lot of respect, and it's amazing when you see what the consequences of getting things wrong can be, just in on the spiritual level in your life and morally as well. You make mistakes with books that you're reading or ideas that you're encountering, and these things have consequences. As you found out as well, there are all kinds of dead ends that you can go down. So language needs to be treated with the the utmost seriousness, and I think it should be something that is stressed as a very important masculine pursuit in particular. And it's sad that in many schools, English and the linguistic arts generally are presented as being more feminine, and whereas the STEM subjects are more masculine. Now, there's
Definitely.
something to that, in that even by about age 3, girls are better with words and vocabulary generally than boys are, and that persists into adulthood. Throughout the whole life, women are better with vocabulary, better at spelling, better with conversation than men are. But it's interesting that in philosophy, for example, in the realm of abstract thought, this is a very male discipline, and the tools are words. So there's something about God as masculine and logos and creating through the power of the word, and masculinity in man as well, that I think is connected. So we shouldn't see poetry, for example, as just about feelings. Instead, it's something that men need, because it's the fusion of the intellectual and the emotional. So part of the appeal to literature, to me anyway, when I was teaching in the classroom, is that that's what it gives us. So you've got these truths about human nature, but presented in ways that are morally powerful and can educate us. So it's a way of encountering the deepest ideas about what it means to be a human being, but through the realm of stories and characters that help us to really bump up against those ideas, which I guess is why Jesus teaches in parables, to help people think in images and grasp the abstract concepts well.
That's fascinating, and it's actually one of the things that I really admire about you, and the power of words, because you are so well measured and articulate, that it's something that it was striking to me, and why I've been drawn to watching your videos. So thank you for that, and exposing me to that as well.
Well, I'm glad that it's helped.
Absolutely, yeah. And the poem, I can't remember who it was by or what it was called the other day, but it was the night that you broke it down in your Substack, maybe last week.
Keats's the Beldam Storm of Sea.
Yes, yeah. That was one of the first poems, and a breakdown of a poem where I really appreciated the value of poetry. Before it was kind of over my head, and I didn't really understand why people would value it so highly. But your breakdown of that really resonated with me.
Good, glad to hear it.
I guess I had a question to do with, so a big part of my awakening to God was this idea of the transcendentals, and the fact that there is an objective good and truth and beauty. And my sense of it is that the ultimate of those things wrapped up together and personified is, in a sense, God, as well as his wholeness and the creative power and all of these things. But that was a way for me to really conceptualize him. And I'm curious what you think of. I've been trying to, when I've been discussing the idea with God with people, I've been trying to explain it through that, because that was what resonated with me. But I'm curious about the relationship to those transcendentals and the idea of love and how they tie together, and if there might be a path to appealing to the idea of love as a reason for God's existence. Have you heard anything about that, or does it make any sense?
Regarding the transcendentals, Aquinas is good on that. The convertibility of the transcendentals. So basically, truth, goodness, and beauty are all, in a sense, the same thing, considered from a different aspect. So the truth of God is his goodness, and this is also beautiful. So all those three things are combined metaphysically, And how does this relate to love? Here, I think Christianity has got the unique insight, even among the monotheistic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, the only monotheistic religions. And they all get this big thing right, but Christianity only has the full truth, which is the Trinity. And that emphasis on the relationality within God. So three in one, and love being about that community. That's where the real mystery is. Now, I don't understand it fully. And that's the whole point of the Trinity, that it's a mystery in a sense that it is above our ability to comprehend. We can't disprove it logically, and we believe it having reasoned our way just through natural reason alone, through philosophy, to the existence of God as the necessary being with all these kinds of attributes like simplicity, etc. But I would focus on the Trinity as the main thing for you to meditate on if you want to understand divine love, because otherwise you're going to end up with something a bit like I always think of Sauron in Lord of the Rings. So you might have this really powerful being, but it's got no room within itself for love because there's no relationship. And the point about the Trinity is that God created the world, created man in particular, to share in the joy of that relationship. And love, again, isn't just a sensation. It's about the willing of the objective good of the other person, which depends on truth. So what objectively is good for the beloved? Well, we will that, and then that is beautiful. So again, you're back to the idea of the truth, goodness, and beauty being convertible. So that would be my sense of where you need to explore more in your reading and also in your prayer as well, would be the Trinity.
Okay, awesome. That's yeah, I appreciate that suggestion. This struck me as you were talking as well, the significance of, especially to truth and beauty of patterns and the proper order of things. There's something that draws people to that. But okay,
yeah, we're built for harmony and the aesthetic appreciation of reality. And it's no coincidence that physicists deciding which equation they think is best going to describe physical reality can just do it by looking for symmetry, harmony, beauty, without even having to do much testing. They'll just say, okay, which one's the most beautiful? That's the one that's going to work. And that is the one that's going to work, because reality all the way through is shot through with those kind of properties, because it reflects God, and our minds are made to appreciate that.
The another thing you spoke about with the Trinity and the significance of relationship between them, it reminded me of another thing that kind of pushed me towards God. Was my friend started a coaching business for men that was based on this program called Internal Family Systems. If you've heard of that, it's a psychological therapy. And very, very briefly, it's this idea of there's different parts within us with conflicting, almost like their own personalities with conflicting desires. So say a part of you wants to eat healthier because you want to be fit, and you know that that's a good, but then you're driving past McDonald's and you've had a long day and you're tired and you think, oh, I might get a cheeseburger. And so in that moment, there's two parts of you that are conflicting. And this therapy is more concerned with traumatized parts of us that lie deeper inside of us, and there's other bodyguards, they call them, and different parts that protect them. And so the therapy is all about communicating with those parts, and through a relationship and through communication from the self, which is this part that doesn't change, and it's supposed to reflect like the healthy adult part of us that's curious, calm, and compassionate. Through acting from that part, you can heal these internal parts of you through communication and relationship. And that was interesting to me. I went through the program and I didn't feel like I had any particular trauma to heal. And I thought, well, where do I go from here? I don't just want to be working with these internal parts. I recognize that prayer is a very similar thing, except instead of you being the healthy adult inside you and having yourself, that's externalized to God and this vision of Jesus as well, and asking that to heal us and communicating and being in relationship with God. And so that's just another aspect of this that was that it just came up for me, and it makes sense as well. Where you were the first person I heard this from. This idea that the individual isn't the primary unit of society; it's actually the family, and the fact that all humans have a mother and a father, and the relationship between those and the significance of that. That's a very interesting thing, the relationship. And then I thought it might actually be one step further, and it's not so much the relationship, but it's our need as humans for dependence, or the inherentness of dependence of humans, especially like I was struck by the story in the Bible where I think it's John the Baptist calls the Pharisees vipers, and it's because the children eat their way out of the mother and kill her, and it's supposed to be derogatory. And I was musing on the idea of like, well, why couldn't that evolve in humans? Like, what is the need for why doesn't it happen? And it's obviously because the human child isn't fully matured and can't go out and survive on their own. They depend on the mother and the father as well. And this idea that dependency seems to be at the core of so many issues within our society. If you think of people who are in codependent relationships, or this idea of drug dependency, and it struck me that being dependent on trying to be dependent on yourself doesn't work, and that we require an external relationship. And that is also what's so powerful about God, is that we can submit ourselves to him and depend on him fully, and that's incredibly freeing.
Yeah, and it's a big challenge to the dominant ideology in secular culture, which is liberalism, which is that you are atomized, disconnected, autonomous, and you basically do your own thing and other people do their own thing. And there's no emphasis on mutual dependency. There's too much stress on individual rights rather than duties and justice within the structure of the family and community at large. So the fact that you've got that insight that the family is the fundamental building block of society, that's one you need to use to guide your own life and your own understanding of what your purpose as a man is, which is you are naturally ordered to fatherhood within the context of that marriage. And there is some truth in some of what the pickup artist community say, in that women shouldn't be pedestalized, because the proper ordering is God first, man, woman, child, and you will be doing damage to that natural order if you put the woman above God in your life. In fact, she will resent you for that, because she wants to be led by you when you are following God. That's the way things are supposed to be.
That just to bring up the natural order, I was watching a video this afternoon, and they brought up this idea of is morality, or the order, is that something that is commanded by God? So if we think of the teachings of Jesus, is that because Jesus said these things are true, or is it revealed by him in the sense that he had a divine insight to the natural order that had existed previously, I guess, was my understanding of what they were asking. And it was a curious thing.
Okay, interesting question. So given that God created all things through the word. In a sense, Jesus is like the author of natural law. So the Ten Commandments are, the church teaches, a privileged expression of natural law. Now, if we were a different kind of creature from what we are, like a gorilla or something, or a tiger, then what would be good for us would be different. But given that we are what we are, rational animals, then necessarily it's the case that what is good for us is natural law. It's what is good for us right now. There's no other way it could be. So God couldn't say that, for example, I don't know, let's take like fornication. You can't say that actually fornication is good for human beings, because given the way in which it takes 20 years for roughly a child to be educated, and it requires the care, attention of both parents, that needs the family, this needs monogamy. So natural law isn't something that is just decided out of nowhere. It's based on the kind of creature that we are. So Jesus's teachings, the Ten Commandments, they are just revealing that in a very crystal clear way, which even the pagan philosophers before them had arrived at vaguely similar conclusions. The Ten Commandments just really clarified it, and then Jesus perfected it.
Okay, excellent. I've got two questions, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, I've got to go in a couple of minutes, but yeah, hit me with them.
Okay, yeah, they're quick ones. So the first one would be, I've been talking to my brother about these ideas, and then I had a call with a friend yesterday who just appears to exhibit these values in a clear way. And so I was curious if he was Christian and practicing, or if he just had rationalized his way to it and is naturally more conservative. And that was the case. He said, I just think that these things are probably the best way to act. And so I value family, and I value community around me. And he agreed with a lot of the same conclusions that I was sharing, that were that come through the Bible. And he still said he was atheist at the end of that call, and he had no need for a God. And so I'm curious, do you think it's necessary that the beginning of the Beatitudes is blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven will be theirs, something to that effect. And that was my experience, was when I was poor in spirit, when I had been done trying to live on my own ego, and I was resigned to, I had reached that rock bottom point where I had complete humility, was the point that I could accept God into my life. Do you think that is the only path to God? Do you think that, like my brother and my friend who already kind of living those values, they would have to reach some sort of crisis before it makes sense to them? Or
well, there's that saying, man's extremity is God's opportunity. And for many people, you do need to have some kind of experience of a void that you've been unable to fill with anything except God, for God to have a space to enter your life. I don't think that's always the case, though. You can get people who are, really crushing it in business or whatever, and they might just, through purely philosophical reasoning, reach the truth of Christianity. But most people, pride gets in the way, and they feel like they're doing a great job running their own lives and they've got what they want, until it all turns to ashes in their mouths, and then they realize they need some kind of more nourishing food. So it's not a coincidence that it's difficult for the rich man to enter heaven. I think that's what that's really saying. You can feel puffed up and proud of yourself, and that you've made it just off your own effort.
Brilliant. My last question was, do you have any plans for a Discord community, or anywhere where your audience can come together?
Yeah. Most people are on Substack, and they're releasing a chat app pretty soon. So as soon as that's out, that'll be it.
Brilliant.
All right. I've enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for sharing your story.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you so much, Will.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Welcome.
I look forward to what you release in the future.
All right. Take care. Stay in touch.
All right. All the
All right.
best. Bye.
Bye.